Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everybody. Welcome for another week. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Del. We're continuing a conversation we had last week.
Exactly. Well, last week we talked about going with the flow in our relationships, like when two people see things differently and about expectations and conversations and agreements and all of that stuff. But this week I thought it'd be really good to just talk about sort of going with the flow with life, just what life presents you. Sometimes it's in the form of our relationships, but it's sometimes just situational or like I was using the example last week of, my remodel, which has taken twice as long and twice as expensive. So that is a life event that I really knew that at some point I won't lie, there'd been nights when I've woken up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, what have I done? I can't finish this. I can't. And I've just had to take a deep breath and just say, you know what, just go with the flow. It's going to be all right. I'm certainly not helping matters by staying here and not lying in the night, not sleeping, worried about things. So that was one example of going with the flow. But what we also mentioned at the end of the show last week was this saying that both Barry and I live by from our USM training and other places, which is, this was something better for the greatest good of all concerned, meaning that we often don't go with the flow of life. We have such a laundry list of what we expect and what we want that we're not living in the moment. We're not appreciating that life is living us. It's living through us.
Mm-hmm.
Often if we get out of our own way, that's where the miracles happen. We all think that we've got to be these great manifestors and we've got to work on things and make it happen and do this. But there is a beauty of like hands off. Where am I being taken? Where am I being guided? What does the universe know is better for me than I know for myself? So I know you've got a lot to say on this subject.
Just a couple of things, maybe. Yes. The first I'll start with is, and this underscores what you said, although I'll say a different way, is that we oftentimes don't really know what life has in store for us. So we think we have this plan, this vision, this idea. As teenagers or young adults, or by parents telling us, you're going to grow up and get married, have kids, and live white picket fence, the whole vision that some people carry, or some iteration of that. And oftentimes, more often than not, that doesn't happen. And so some people still carry that disappointment or resentment about the fact that what they thought was going to be their life result isn't happened or hasn't happened yet. So part of this journey is like not having a death grip on your vision or what's going to happen. It's holding things with a light touch. And for me, the lessons, and having been on the journey for many years, I clearly have learned the lesson more times than I can count of holding things with a lighter touch, like being happily playing and involved with stuff, but not being too fixated on the result. Because 90% of the time, if I had let go and allow the result to be what it's going to be, it's better off than I could have made it myself. And that's one of the biggest secrets about this journey, I think, for a lot of people, is the more you can be in the flow and be more receptive to what's happening and be guided, like you were saying, about like what's possible, what can happen, the more you'll be surprised pleasantly by what does happen. So it's worth definitely being involved in this journey this way.
Yeah. I'm thinking of two phrases that popped in my mind when you were talking. One was, if you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And the other one was, it was a Michael Neal quote he did the other day, which is really funny. It was something like, if you want a happy life, accept the life you have today, or something like that. And there was so much truth in it, because so many of us we have these visions of what we think it should be, or whether we've carried them from childhood or whatever. And we're always comparing what we have with what the illusion of what we think is going to make us happy. And when we do that, it's like putting a damper on what exists, or what's the flame that's alive right now within us. It's like this constant, yeah, but Yeah, but this. Yeah, but yeah, I was promised this. I thought that, it's like, well, sorry, life doesn't work like that. It's we again, Michael Singer, quote. She got it from a million other spiritual teachers, but you know, everything that happens us for us is sorry happens to us is for us, and there's a gift in it. And when we live in the present moment and we're always looking for whatever the gift in that moment is, we are going to be happy.
In fact, speaking of Michael Singer, I want to recommend, if you haven't read his book, The Surrender Experiment, I highly recommend anybody who's listening, if you haven't read it, do it, because he in his book, in his bio, which is basically an autobiography, expresses and explains how the flow of life is bigger than he could imagine and better than he can imagine. I mean, when I started his book, I was like, he did what?
Yeah,
But it wasn't things that he planned on or tried to do. It was like life just said, here, we're going this way now. And he went, okay. And he went with that. Maybe not as easily as that initially, but the benefits, the results, and the success he had, and the value of life he got to explore and enjoy was so much greater than he could have done on his own. And
exactly.
so I definitely take to heart that teaching as a reminder, because frankly, we can't we might want to, but we can't predict what life's going to give us, bring us, or do for us. And we also don't know, I think there's a Mark Twain quote about the dash between on a gravestone. It's like that's what life is. That's all the experience you can have is the dash between when you're born and when you die. So we don't know what that is, and we can't tell how long it's going to be. We don't know what our end date's going to be. So why not live life in a place of gratitude and flow and excitement and possibility? Because nobody's going to get out of this alive.
No, I'm glad you brought up the title of the book, because that's the book where it's a fabulous book. That's where he says, it's when we sit there and the flow of life is coming to us and we start going, oh, that's good, that's bad. When we sit
Hmm.
there sorting and pecking between what life brings us, we're either putting ourselves in a state of distress by, oh, that's bad, that's not what I want, or elevation when we go, oh, this is good for us. But when we're just in that state of acceptance of, you know what, good, bad, it's all for us. It's not as extreme, our experience of life. We can still experience incredible joy, but less sort of real disappointment or hurt or anger when we see that, well, we don't know if it's good for us or not. It's that wonderful, the farmer, the guy that, has a son that, the story that I love, the farmer. It's very,
Yeah, yeah.
for people that haven't heard it, haven't listened to it in years, so hopefully I'm going to get it right. But basically, the Chinese farmer has a son, and there's a war, and he doesn't want his son to go off to war. And but there is a war, and they're gathering all the young men. But before the men come to gather his son, they find a horse, and the villagers are like, "Oh my God, you found a horse! How great!" Lucky you. And the farmer goes, yeah, who knows, or something like that. Then his son gets on the horse and breaks his leg. So by the time the recruiters come, they can't recruit him because he's got a broken leg. But when he broke his leg, all the villagers are going, oh, your poor son, he broke his leg. The horse is not so lucky. But then the farmer's like, oh, there was luck because he had a broken leg, he didn't go to war. So there's all this to and fro, backwards and forwards as to whether something is good for you or not. When we choose it in the moment to decide, it was some of the worst things that can happen to us end up being the best thing that can happen to us. I think
That's the key. Because that story, I remember that story too. The core thing is that all the way through, the father has this response, which basically is "we shall see" sort of idea, because he's not fixated on good or bad, but everyone else is judging and blaming and like critiquing what's going on. And that, frankly, is what life is like sometimes. We sometimes have this place where we look at something, as you were saying, as being good or bad, and then we base our response after that. It's like, what if we just looked at everything as being what it is?
yeah,
And then once we experience it, we know if it's good or bad.
yeah,
And again, we don't know till afterwards if that bad experience became good or that good experience became bad. So we can't control it that way.
exactly. And sometimes we give ourselves that hindsight. Like, I remember when I got divorced, I thought it was the worst thing in the world for me because I loved my husband. I wanted to give my children um, uh, an intact family, the type of family I wish I'd had growing up, a normal childhood. So I was very hurt and disappointed when it ended in divorce. And then
Mm-hmm.
when we also sort of my way of life dramatically changed. Again, there was that, oh my God, why do my friends get to keep their houses or raise their children in their houses? And I've gone from a mansion to a mobile home. How did that happen? And But again, I look back, and as more time goes by, the more grateful I am that I got a divorce. Doesn't mean I didn't love my husband and love my life and my children, but I've grown so much from that experience. I
Hmm.
have learned so much about myself. I am in a wonderful, beautiful relationship for the last 14 years with a man that absolutely loves and cherishes me, and I feel wonderful with. So there are so many blessings. But in that moment, it to me felt like the worst thing I could have ever gone through, quite honestly, at that moment, or one of the worst things, I should say. Um, but again, I also have a lot of gratitude for my marriage as well. I left it saying, no other man could have given me the children I have. So instead of going to, oh, this was a mistake, I'm like, no, we came together for a reason. We had the children we did, which are incredible children, and I'm grateful for that. So when you look back on things and you see the gifts, and you see the challenging parts as also having brought you gifts, um, and the further you get away from these situations, as you say, they evolve, they change. You see the beauty so much clearer than when you're totally managing right on top of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I was looking back at my own journey, and there have been definitely things in my life where I looked at this with disappointment. One of the things I look at vividly was in high school, I didn't have the high enough grades to go to university when I came out when I was in high school. I did okay, I got O levels and A levels, English education. So I went to Polytechnic instead of going to university. And the Polytechnic in England, I still does this back in the day though, was like industrial training. So you'd have a 3 year degree split into 4 years and having a year's worth of placement in between where you get to work somewhere in the corporate world that matches the degree you're going for. And I was in computer science back then. And the thing was is that my disappointment about not getting into university was replaced by excitement because I got to go work in the industry and find out at the time when I was in the industry of computer programming back in way back when, is that the experience, my business experience was more valuable than having a degree. And so I never went back to college ultimately.
Mhm.
And so I stayed working, and that was actually a gift. So it's like the downside of not getting a degree became a plus side. I got to work and get paid well and have a great time as a kid, as a young 20-year-old.
Mhm.
And then all the way through. And then because I worked in the industry, I got placed into work in Germany for a year and a half. I never expected to go work in Germany, but that happened. Then it became, to go to the States. So all these things that happened in my life that I couldn't have predicted. And yet I look back on with gratitude and thankfulness because they did happen. So all the way through my life, I've noticed that. And every so often, a part of my mind goes, "Oh, that wish that hadn't happened that way." And there's another part of my mind goes, "Remember when?"
Yeah.
So I've got the anchor of positive result from a surprise experience I didn't expect. And so part of this journey of going with the flow is be willing to be surprised
Yeah.
because that's what happens.
I love that story, and it's. I mean, it's so true. And yes, we're human. We're going to, and we share very similar experiences. I didn't. I went to Polytechnic in the UK too because I wanted to become a costume designer, or a fashion designer rather, and I went to more of a trade school where I learned how to cut patterns, create
Mm.
fabrics, weave, print, make shoes, make hats, make everything. I was so industrial when it came to fashion. Um, but then I decided I ended up leaving for personal reasons, to do with a family member that was ill. But again, sometimes I go, oh, I wish I'd stayed. I wish I'd completed. But because I didn't stay, I ended up coming on holiday to the US, and I was wearing something I'd made. And within 2 weeks, I was working with Adrian Lin, who was this great director that did Flashdance and great commercials with Lindy with Christy Brinkley and all these they were oh my god, my mind is blanking. Names go, don't they? Calvin Klein commercials and things like that. But just big time things and working on movies with, as I said, Liz Taylor and people like that. And I never, ever was it my dream to come to the States and work in that field. It didn't even cross my radar, even though I wanted to do fashion design. I saw myself in London and I saw myself doing this and this and this. And it went from being, thinking I had a world of fashion design into a world of costumes and styling and an amazing life that I couldn't have possibly imagined for myself. And again, I say that when we have these goals that are so lofty and they're so out there and they're so far we don't ever look at what's right around us in the moment, what the
Hmm.
invitations are. And just to continue on that for a second, I think I shared that, I got hacked before Christmas and basically all my followers were taken away. And it's definitely had an effect on me because it took me years to build, thousands and thousands of followers. But I'm also seeing it as an opportunity that life is saying to me, there's something new for you, Del, something new.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that is yet. And I'm okay because I've still got the remodel I've got to get through. But I am excited rather than like, because I've done everything I can to get back my social media platforms and they're just gone. They're gone for good. I've contacted, senators,
Yeah.
everybody, and they're like, nope, sorry, can't do anything, private entity. And and it was hurtful because I was trying to do something responsible and good and respond to somebody saying that I was doing something illegal. And so I clicked on the button that I knew inside I shouldn't have clicked on. I got hacked. But anyway, so yeah, there is a new incarnation coming for me. I haven't a clue what it is. But because of I know how to go with the flow of life as opposed to resist it and be angry with it and be mournful of it, I'm excited. I'm excited
Right.
to see what happens.
Oh yeah, and that for me is the interesting thing is sometimes things that look so horrendous or so challenging can happen. And yes, just to be transparent, it's like it can be hard sometimes to keep a head above water and to look at that and say, what's the good can come out of this? It's kind of the joke about going the two kids going to the barn and they were shoveling the horse shit out of the barn, and one of them was like upset and moaning about doing it. The other one's like, if all this shit in it, there must be a pony somewhere. It's like that difference of perspective is like what's possible, and is that interesting conversation because sometimes things happen to us. I got my I've had one car stolen, had another car actually, I've had two cars stolen over the years, and then another car totaled. It's like those aren't great things. But the reality is, what comes next can be better, or even down the road, several things down the road can be better. I mean, again, like in my career, I was a computer programming back in the early days. Got to the States. If I hadn't moved to the States, the life journey I would have been on that got me to where I am now, having written my book and doing podcasts with you and other things I do in my life and my work, the life experience I had along the way gave me all the content, juice, grist for the work that I do now in my life. So I wouldn't have been doing this if I hadn't gone through everything that happened before that. And that's one thing I want to add as a little point, reminding anybody, if you are in a place in your life where you're happy with what's going on and things are going great and you're like, this is awesome, which we have at times,
Mm-hmm.
you have, one of the things you may want to look at as having to adjust to the idea is that everything that happened before that must have been okay to get you here. So however good, bad, or ugly it was, those experiences, same as like, you can't change anything without changing where you are now, had to be in place for you to have what you have now. So if you have that things working in your life, whether it's career, relationship, lifestyle, whatever it is, everything that happened before got you here.
Mm-hmm.
So have a little gratitude for everything, good, bad, or indifferent that happened back then, so you can be fully embracing what you have now.
Yeah. No, 100%. And keeping on the barn theme, they always say like when the barn burns down, you can see the moon. So it's like think and look back,
Yeah.
but there is a bonus to it. And as you were talking, I was thinking that, yeah, even from childhood, I mean, my childhood wasn't, I don't look back on it and think, quite frankly, I look back on it and I don't ever remember being happy. I remember being a very sad, very scared, very lonely little girl that just wasn't very happy. But
Hmm.
I am grateful for everything I went through. I really am. I can't imagine having another childhood because I think it gave me empathy. It helped me become a much better coach and a spiritual teacher. But more importantly than anything, I think it made me a much better mother. I think
Mm,
having experiences when I was younger that I found very painful, they they have stayed with me as a marker to say, don't ever do this to other people, especially to your children. Don't
right.
don't do that. And so it's a place to work from, but it's not. I don't go, oh, I wish I'd never had. I never wish anything that I hadn't gone through anything. In fact, I can't really honestly say I can say that because just like you, I think it's the matrix, it's the fabric, it's the interwovenness. I don't think you can pull one thread out and say, oh, that didn't belong in there. I mean, the whole piece falls apart. It's like every piece was integral. And the other thing is if you're a painter, I'm a painter, and it's like you need some of the neutrals, you need some of the darks, and you need contrast, you need different things in there to create
Yeah.
a wonderful tapestry, as opposed to just say, oh, I'm just going for bright colors. That would get, especially for me that likes muted tones, it would be really jarring to have nothing but bright primary colors, on everything.
Well,
I like the high
that
and the low.
that actually brings in another piece which adds to this, which is about how we receive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we look at things and like we only want to hear good things from people. We don't have any people as bad things, so we don't want criticism. We only want positive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of that is also sometimes when we get criticism, we collapse inside. We cave in. Whereas when we get compliments, we shy away from them as well. But
Mm-hmm.
if we look at both as being just information that can help us, negative or positive, is going to help us, then we can receive it with neutrality and with willingness to observe and witness and listen to what's being given to us. The joke that about with feedback is, if we don't want negative feedback, why do we have negative terminals on our batteries on our cars? We just pull the thing off and it's like, why doesn't the car start? Because you need both in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So having negative and positive is part of life's journey. And so having the dark color as well as the light colors, same idea is like, it's a spectrum that we have to enjoy and embrace all of it. If you only have half of it, you're only half living. So it really is about having appreciation, acceptance for all that comes to us, good or bad. Because the thing is, the good or bad is what we choose to call it that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what experience, yes, we obviously don't want to spend the time in the muck and the mire all the time, but you might find a gold ring in there. So, it's like, don't be too caught up in the it's bad or it's good. Be
Yeah.
willing to look at the positivity, what's possible.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, and I'm also thinking it's like we're not talking about spiritual bypass here at all. We're talking
No,
about actually
right.
working with spiritual tools, because the spiritual bypass is like everything's fine, I don't feel anything. It's like I'm okay, and we're
Yep.
completely disconnected. And as they say, there's plenty of time to be 100% spiritual when we're dead. But while we are here on this earth, spiritual
Yep.
beings having a human experience, wearing these human suits that we do, we
Right.
we have psychology, we have emotions, and we're going to find certain situations really challenging and really hard. And that's when knowing spiritual principles can help. Doesn't mean that we're not going to that we live in that state 100%. We don't. We can't. We're human, but we can bounce back. Our natural resilience can pop back up when we go, oh yeah, this is actually, can't see it right now, but this is actually good for me in some way. I'll find out later, but for right now, I'm just trusting. I'm trusting that it's good for me.
That is key. Absolutely. Yeah. It is. It is tempting sometimes to try and put. So like, again, it's like that's the thing about only bright colors. It's that Pollyanna mindset, and not in a bad way, not in a good way, because there are some Pollyanna techniques that are really good, but to simply just be oblivious to and ignore and suppress any bad things is basically causing disaster, because we're not looking with clear eyes and seeing everything. That's the other part as well, is that you got to be willing to see all the spectrum available, because you can make decisions based on that.
Yeah.
But if you're only looking at the good stuff only, you're missing out on what's possible to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes those quote negative experiences are where most of the teaching happens and the learning happens. Because oftentimes when things are good, we just basically check out. We just go along for the ride without any consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important, I feel, yes, using spiritual tools, spiritual principles, but understanding that life is messy, that life does have positive, negative extremes, and that we play on that spectrum. And so it is part of the journey to be willing to learn from everything that happens to us
Yeah.
and for us.
Exactly. And not to be afraid of the experience. That's the other thing. Like when I was hacked, I felt violated. I felt out of control. I felt I felt it was unfair. As I say, I was trying to be responsible. I was told I was doing something, that I shouldn't have done, used a photograph I shouldn't have done. And I thought, gosh, what if the photographer has changed his mind and it's not a free photograph anymore? And he would like me to buy it and whatever. So I was coming from a good place. So the injustice felt really like a sting for me. But
Yeah.
I felt it and allowed myself to feel it. I allowed myself to not react in like, okay, I've got to build my following again. I've got to get back what I lost. I really sort of went, you know what, I'm just going to feel what I feel. And a lot of feelings came up because I was beginning to get actually very tired of social media, if I'm really honest. I was really
Mm.
beginning to feel like it was I was tired of the people friend requesting me and trying to sell me stuff constantly,
Oh,
every day, every day.
yeah.
And, so there were some of those things that were getting very irritating for me. But again, instead of being reactive, I have taken a step back. I have sort of cocooned myself a little, allowed myself to feel what I feel. But again, as I said, I have that part that's telling me, honor where you're at, honor how you feel, don't get stuck there for too long, be open to what is new that's going to flow in and direct you. And as I
Mhm.
say, once more things are off my plate and there's more room for that, once this remodel is over, I'm feeling the excitement of knowing there's something else coming. And I plant seeds and I say to people, this may be a career change for me. Anybody got any great ideas out there? Let's see. And we'll just see what happens. And doesn't mean that I won't go back to building 10, 15,000 followers, whatever it is, and doing that again. I don't know yet, but
Mhm.
I'm okay not knowing. See, that's the key, is the okay not knowing. We as
Right.
humans think we have to know everything that's coming up, and that's
It's
not
it's
going with the flow.
it's the discomfort in the unknown is the challenge, and it is definitely something where it's almost like, and I've had this happen more than once, but it's not something I do all the time. But definitely the idea of having the excitement about the unknown
Mm,
versus the fear and doubt about the unknown. It's like, what if what's going to happen is better than I can imagine?
mhm,
I mean, if we just simply start setting up our mindset and our focus in what we're doing in the flow, to really see that what's possible is greater than we can think of, is better than we have hoped for, is more exciting, fulfilling, satisfying than we'd even dream of.
mhm.
What if?
Yeah,
I mean, for me, being a science fiction lover, I've always had the what if conversation is one of my favorite things, and to actually see through the lens of life of what is possible, just like, what if that happens? What if really the best things happen?
yeah,
Wouldn't that be cool? If it doesn't, it's okay, because you're not attached to it, but you're being open to it. So yes, being in the unknown with grace, with appreciation, and with excitement is definitely a better way to play.
yeah. And one last thing I'm thinking also is that attachment we have to the known is, it's so funny. It's like, sorry, my dog is scratching me. That's what you can hear, construction. Um, but having that, I also tend to want to look at life as not so much as, did I enjoy it all? did I get lots of things that made me really happy? I want to die going, that was a hell of a ride. Wow, what a roller coaster. I do. I want to die feeling like I had a lot of life experience. That I
Hmm.
ran the gamut. That I had the highs and the lows, and that's the drama queen in me. But but I really do, because I don't want to, crawl into my grave going, "Poof, got here safely."
Hmm.
I want to skid in, slide in, and go, "That was one hell of a ride," and phew, can't wait for the next one.
Right. No, that is really the joy, is to have the recognition that life is an adventure, that life is fun, and that why not? Imagine the flow of life being like, roaring rapids. I mean, have fun with the ride. Because the thing is, and it's true that some people, hate the idea of going on the rapids. Some people love going on the rapids. I
Mm,
hated it till I did it, and then I'm like, okay, I understand now. It's really fun.
yeah.
And that idea about riding the wave of life and riding the flow of life as an adventure, so that when you are done with life, you are going, yes, that was worth it.
Yeah, 100%.
That's, that's a fulfilled life, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I like that little button you put on that, Barry.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That was wonderful. Thank you, Barry, for another great chat. And we will see you all
Thank you,
next
Bill.
week.
Yes, take care of yourselves, and we'll have more good stuff to talk about next time.
Yes. Unless I've ditched Barry again.
Construction, damn it.
Construction, exactly. All right, then. Take care. Have a great week, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.